What is up, everybody? We are back here at King Film Sports for the NFL Week 17 Playoff Picture analysis, where I will be breaking down both the AFC and NFC Playoff Pictures here, and then I will be getting into my predictions for how I think the results will unfold for the final 2 weeks, picking every regular season game, and then seeing what playoff seeding ensues from there on out. So here we get into the AFC Playoff Picture, and the Ravens and Dolphins both got two huge wins. We'll start out with the Ravens, 1 seed, 12-3. They have not quite clinched the division yet. None of these divisions in the AFC have been clinched yet, but the Ravens took a big step towards doing so with a colossal win in San Francisco on Christmas night. They have clinched a playoff berth now, 12-3, and they can lock up the number 1 seed with a win at home in Week 17 against the Miami Dolphins. Now we get to the Dolphins, 11-4, big win at home against the Cowboys there, and now they officially clinched the playoffs. They have not clinched the division. They can do that this week with a win in Baltimore or with a Buffalo loss against New England, but that will be very unlikely, so probably going to need to win against the Ravens, and they will get the number 1 seed if they win out, so they control their own destiny, as do the Ravens, and those are the two teams with the highest likelihood to get to the number 1 seed. The Browns could also do it, but that will be very low chance. Then you get to the Chiefs. They still have this 3 seed at 9-6, but this is not the same Kansas City team that we are accustomed to seeing in years past. I mean, that is a dreadful loss on Christmas to the Raiders, and now they're still probably going to win this division. They would have to lose out to the Bengals and the Chargers, which is very low probability, but just shows how vulnerable this team could be. They will probably be in this 3 seed for the playoffs, and we'll see. It's Mahomes, but they're just looking to get on track with some wins to finish out the regular season. Then you've got the Jags at 8-7, and similar to Kansas City. I mean, this team was 8-3, looking like a potential 1 seed contender, lost 4 straight, and they're honestly just fortunate to still be in the lead in this division, and that's because the Texans and Colts both lost this week. So this division really coming down to a crapshoot. No team looks like they really want to win this division, but one team will have to. The Jags have the highest probability to, as they have the easiest schedule and they win the tiebreakers for now, but you never know with how bad this Jags team is playing. So then we get to the wild card race, and this will be thrilling. So the Browns are 10-5, and it looks like they are a firm contender here to get this number 5 seed, as they got a big win in Houston last week, and they can still win the division, although lower likelihood now that the Ravens won against the Niners. They would have to win out and then have the Ravens lose out, so pretty low chance, but they do have a pretty easy schedule to round it out here, so they should be able to get the 5 seed at least. Then you've got the Bills, who jump up to the 6 seed. Wow, that 6-6, this is a team that was not looking like they had the highest chances to make the playoffs, but now after 3 wins, however close it was against the Chargers, they are now in the 6th seed, and they can win the division if they win out and the Dolphins lose out there. We could see a Week 8 AFC East championship there. Then we get to the 7th seed with the Colts at 8-7, and this is a team that was looking good, streaking with Gardner Minshew. Took a tough loss last week to Atlanta, but they still win these key tiebreakers. That is very important for them at this point. They play the Raiders and the Texans to end out the regular season, so we'll see what they do there. Texans at 8-7, and they've been a pretty surprising team this year, but Stroud has missed the last 2 weeks. We'll see if he comes back from concussion. They're going to need him to if they want to make the playoffs here. They still have a big game against the Colts in Week 18, so we'll see if he comes back. That will be very important for them. The Steelers at 8-7 looked like they fell off after the 3-game losing streak. They are officially back with that big win with Mason Rudolph against the Bengals there at home, and that drops the Bengals down to 8-7 there as well. Brutal loss for them after they were on a 3-game win streak with Jake Browning. Both of those teams will still have chances to make the playoffs, but all these teams in the hunt will have to win out and also get some help there as well. Then you see the 7 and 8 teams, the Raiders and the Broncos, both alive to still win the division, but their easiest path is probably going to be through the wild card, and they will have to win out and get a bunch of help with a lot of these other teams losing, because there's just so many teams stacked up in the hunt here, so that will be very interesting to monitor. So with that being said, now let's get to the NFC, where we still have the same team atop the conference, the Niners, but they do lose, drop down to 11-4. Last week, it seemed like they had a stronghold on the conference. Now, there is a little more leeway here. Potentially Eagles or Lions could jump up to the number 1 seed if the Niners falter here. They still have that division locked up, and as long as they beat the Commanders and Rams, they will get the 1 seed, but if they lose one of those, then it will be up for grabs. You've got the Eagles at the 2 seed as the Cowboys lose there. If the Eagles can just beat the Cardinals and Giants the last 2 weeks, they will remain in the 2 seed. Then you've got the Lions at 11-4 here, losing out on the tiebreakers to the Niners and Eagles, but they did lock up the NFC North, and they have a big showdown against the Cowboys on Saturday night. We'll see who wins that game. That will be crucial for seeding there. Then you've got the Bucs 8-7. Sneaky good team right now, the Bucs, on a bit of a win streak with Baker Mayfield playing great offense and all-around football here, looking like a sneaky dark horse contender in that NFC South, and the Saints and Falcons both 7-8, so it looks like the Bucs have a good chance coming up this week. They play the Saints, and then I think they ended up with the Panthers, so pretty manageable schedule there, and we'll see what they can do. Then you've got the Cowboys, who have lost 2 straight. The road woes continue, and that is not good, because now it is looking increasingly likely that they will have to play on the road throughout the playoffs, as they'll need the Eagles to lose a game if they want to win the division, so they're going to be at this 5 seed, going to have to be on the road in all 3 rounds until the Super Bowl, so we'll see As I mentioned, that big game against the Lions, but that one's at home, so will they really prove anything? No one's going to buy into the hype, but we'll see about this Dallas team. It comes down to the playoffs every year, and they historically underperform, but you never know. Then we get to the other wildcard teams, and this will be a battle for these last two playoff spots. Right now, it looks pretty clean. These two teams, Rams and Seahawks at 8-7, and you've got four teams at 7-8, and then the Bears at 6-9. But the way that these schedules pan out, this will be very entertaining. The Rams are on a bit of a heater, won 5 of their last 6. This Rams offense looks like it did in that Super Bowl season a couple years ago. They're still not as complete of a team, I think, but they are surging with that McVay play calling. The only tough thing for them is that they have the Giants next week in New York, but then they end at the Niners, and that is a game where the Niners probably won't be resting their starters. The Niners will need to win that for the 1 seed, so that's pretty tough. Tough schedule there. Then the Seahawks 8-7. They got another big win this week on the road at Tennessee, so get them to 8-7. And if they win out, they're in, and they will be favored to do so as they have a home game against the Steelers and then are at the Cardinals there. Then you have the Vikings, tough loss for them against Detroit at home, but they do have 2 very important games to end out the season. They have Green Bay at home this week, at the Lions in Week 18. We'll see if the Lions are playing their players. I assume that they will in that one. So we'll see what they can do there. Then you have the Falcons, a big win to keep their playoff hopes alive this last week. They can still win the division or get the wild card there. Then you've also got the Saints, as I mentioned, 7-8, tough loss to the Rams. They play the Bucs this next week, and then they play that Falcons team in Week 18. So NFC South, very much still alive for all of these teams. Bucs have the best opportunity to win it, though. Then Packers, as I mentioned, play the Vikings this week, and then they play the Bears in Week 18. And then the Bears, 6-9, very low probability to get to the playoffs, but it's a good story late. Justin Fields and that offense has been playing better, and they still are alive in the playoffs with 2 weeks to go. So with that being said, let's get to my results for this next week, Week 17. As always, I will have my NFL picks and predictions for Week 17 and betting locks in the top right for you guys to watch here. Not going to be explaining my reasoning for all these games, but just going to be going through the results and how they relate to the playoff picture. So here we got on Thursday night, Browns beat the Jets there. That locks up their playoff spot. And then that Saturday night showdown, I've got Dallas winning in the NFC there. And then I've got the Ravens winning that Titanic clash against Miami at home, locks up the number 1 seed for them. Bills I have beating the Patriots. I have the Falcons beating the Bears. Houston gets a much-needed win at home against the Titans. I have a sneaky upset win with the Raiders over the Colts there. That one will be big for the wild card in the AFC. I have the Jags getting right against the Panthers. Rams beat the Giants in New York. Then I have the Eagles beating Arizona at home. And then I have the Saints getting a big upset win at home against the Bucs. I have the Niners winning in Washington. And then I have Seattle beating the Steelers at home there. Broncos win against the Chargers at home. Chiefs get a much-needed win at home against the Bengals. And the Packers beat Minnesota on the road there. Don't pay attention to the scores. The site that I was using just randomly assigned scores to the games. I just put in the winner there using a different site this time because ESPN's playoff machine was down there, if you're wondering in the comments. So now let's go to the results and how it relates to the playoff picture. So the Ravens, as I mentioned, lock up that number 1 seed against the Dolphins there, move to 13-3. So they can basically rest their starters if they want to in Week 18 against the Steelers. And that puts the Dolphins in a predicament as now they are out of the 1 seed race. And then that sets up an AFC East championship game in Miami in Week 18. So that will be a brutal turn of events for the Dolphins there. They will not want that to happen. Then you've got the Chiefs. They officially lock up the AFC West and are at 10-6 there. Under this scenario, they would be locked in at the number 3 seed as they can't move up, can't move down. So maybe they end up resting their starters against the Chargers there. Then you've got the Jags at 9-7. They haven't fully locked up this AFC South, but they get right against Carolina there at home. Then you've got the Browns locking up a playoff spot, 11-5, looking good there, but they are out of the AFC North race there with the Baltimore win at home against the Dolphins. And then the Bills, as I mentioned, set up that AFC East championship game, and that one could be huge because if they beat the Dolphins, then they'd go up to the 2 seed, and if they lose, depending on other events, they could be knocked out of the playoffs entirely. So that one would be very huge there. And then you've got the Texans at 9-7, slip into the playoffs with some other results. The Bengals lost to the Chiefs, and the Steelers lost to the Seahawks there. Those were some other teams that were in it. The Colts also lost to the Raiders. So see how those events go in Week 18. Now let's go to the NFC, where the Niners retain the number 1 seed with their win against the Commanders. The Eagles win against the Cardinals at home. And the Lions, in spite of their loss to the Cowboys, they don't move. They stay at 11-5. I have the Bucs losing to the Saints at home, but they still retain this 4 seed because of the tiebreakers. I actually have a 3-way tie at 8-8 between all of these teams, but the Bucs have the best divisional record, so they stay atop the division there. Then I have the Cowboys at 11-5. That Lions win doesn't do a lot for them. They still need the Eagles to lose another game, so we'll see if that happens there. And then I've got the 6 and 7 seeds staying the same. I have the Rams winning in New York against the Giants, and then I have the Seattle Seahawks winning at home against the Steelers. But there are some teams on the prowl, though, looking for that spot. For instance, you've got the Packers at 8-8, and then, as I mentioned, the Falcons and the Saints at 8-8 as well, looking for those playoff spots. So now let's get into the Week 18 results, see what I have here. So started out with Seattle winning in Arizona there. That locks them up a playoff spot at a 10-7 record. Then Steelers, I have them winning in Baltimore because I think the Ravens rest their starters, having already locked up the number 1 seed. Then Bucks wrap up the NFC South with their win against Carolina. I have the Bengals beating the Browns, as I think the Browns are pretty much locked into their seed, locked into the playoffs. They might rest some players there, and the Bengals will really need that one to get into the playoffs. Then I have the Lions beating the Vikings at home, trying to get that best seed possible. The Packers beat the Bears in that one, and the Colts beat the Texans. That one will be big for playoff ramifications in the AFC. You've got the Chiefs beating the Chargers, but they're pretty much locked into their 3 seed anyway. And then another big game in the AFC for wildcard ramifications. Raiders beat the Broncos there. And then I've got the Bills beating the Dolphins in that AFC East championship game. Just think that the Bills are one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now. I just think that they're better than Miami. I think that they win that one on the road. Got the Saints beating the Falcons at home there. We'll see if that one ends up mattering. The Eagles lock off the NFC East with their win against the Giants. The Niners wrap up the number 1 seed, secure the home field advantage in the playoffs and the bye with their win against the Rams. And then I've got the Jags winning the AFC South with their win against the Titans. Dallas wins against the Commanders as well. So let's check out how this impacted the AFC playoff picture here. And as I mentioned, Ravens had already locked up the number 1 seed there. Then the Bills jump all the way up to the number 2 seed. Remember, they have that head-to-head win against the Chiefs. So essentially in this prediction, they will be going from 6-6 to 11-6, 5-game win streak, and get up all the way to the 2 seed with their win against the Dolphins. The Chiefs still at the 3. The Jags secure the 4 seed, same as last year, winning the AFC South. Then the Browns, even though they lose to the Bengals, rest some players, still get the number 5 seed, so all good for them. The Dolphins fall to the 6th seed here, so there's high variance. They've already clinched the playoffs, but in this scenario, they've lost 2 games and fall to the number 6 seed. And then the number 7 seed, I have the Steelers getting this one here. They lose to Seattle in Week 17, but bounce back in Week 18, and they win the tiebreaker against some other teams here, including the Colts, Texans, Raiders. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. But in this one, the Steelers end up stealing that 7th seed. Now we get to the NFC, where it's also interesting. So you've got the Niners wrapping up the number 1 seed at 13-4. They obviously have the tiebreaker over the Eagles with that head-to-head win, but the Eagles do get the number 2 seed and the NFC East crown. Then you've got the Lions at 12-5, the number 3 seed. The Bucks secure the NFC South at 9-8, the 4 seed. And then you've got the Cowboys 12-5, the 5th seed. Seahawks at 10-7 with the 6th seed when it looked like they were dead earlier at 6-7. Boy, have they rebounded. And then the 7th seed came down to a lot of teams. The Packers ended up winning out at 9-8. So the other teams that you had involved in the mix here were the Saints and Falcons. The winner of that one would go to 9-8. And then the Rams, who lost to the Niners, were 9-8 as well. But the Packers won out on those tiebreakers, so they end up making the playoffs at the 7th seed there. So with all that being said, let me know what you guys think of my playoff predictions down below. What do you think of the current playoff picture heading into Week 17? Let me know in the comments down below where you disagree with my takes. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.